Hello, class. Good morning. The bell has rung. Take your seats. You know the drill, everyone. Welcome to class, History of Classical Music. And guess what we're going to talk about today? Part one. Yes, there are multiple parts of the medieval period, also known as the Middle Ages, as you see there on your screen. We're going to talk a little bit about the early Middle Ages. We'll outline a little bit of, the history past that as well, but really what we want to basically understand, we want to get a basic outline of how things generally were during this time. And, this is a long period, 476 to about 1400 AD. That's a long time. That's a long time. And there's the very beginnings of the Middle Ages are very, very different than the very end of the Middle Ages, and a lot happens in between. So we're going to get started here. I think we can move on now. And we're going to talk about the music. Obviously, this is a music history unit here, so we're going to talk about the musical aspects of it, but music doesn't exist in a vacuum. Maybe you know what I mean by that, meaning that music, like other forms of art and other areas of life, a lot of it is informed by what's going on in the world around it, you know? So there's a particular style of music that is being used here in the beginning of the Middle Ages, and to be fair, continues to be used throughout. And this is called plain chant. But before we get to that, we want to discuss what is going on in the world, and in particular what's going on in Europe during this time, since this is the area that we're going to be kind of focusing on. So we know that the Middle Ages begins in the year 476, which is the date given to the fall of the Western Roman Empire. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the Catholic Church became a unifying force throughout Europe, and this is true. The Catholic Church had been the official church of the Roman Empire at the time that it fell. It's important to know, too, that at different points throughout antiquity, the Catholic Church was illegal. It was an illegal church, and if you've seen the pictures of the people getting eaten by lions in the Colosseum and getting killed by gladiators and things like that, that shows the persecution of the church during that time. But it kind of rose up, and then after the Emperor Constantine became the official religion of the church. So because of that, most people throughout Europe, belonged to the church, and the church had a lot of influence over people's day-to-day lives. Life centered around the church for most people, and this includes all facets of life, including art, architecture, and even music. So a lot of the music being written at this time was, was being influenced by the people's religious faith, in this case, the Catholic Church. Okay. The type of music that was used in the Catholic Mass, so this is music being used specifically for the Mass, which is the Catholic Church service. And this particular type of music was called plain chant. Now, depending on where you lived, there are different styles of plain chant. Okay, so there's Byzantine chant, there's Mozarabic chant, there's even Hebrew chant, and there's there's all different sorts of chant, plain chant, right? But the most common style throughout Western Europe was called Gregorian chant. That was named after Pope Gregory I, also sometimes called Pope Gregory the Great. Okay, and the Gregorian chant, as with all forms of plain chant, they are monophonic. I know what you're saying, Mr. DeJoseph. Monophonic, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to tell you what it means in just a second here. Okay. Alrighty. Monophonic music, also referred to as monophony, right? Monophony is the noun and monophonic is the adjective, versions of the same word, right? But either way, this can be broken into its two root words. Mono, what does mono mean? Mono is one, meaning one. And phon, which means sound. Like when you talk on your cell phone, you talk on it, you're hearing sounds, right? That's why it's called the phone. This is music, so literally it translates into one sound. That's what it translates into literally. But what does that mean for us? Well, this means that this is music that has only one voice part. Okay, it can be sung solo or with a group. Now, Mr. Joseph, if there's only one voice part, how could it be sung with a group? Right? That doesn't make sense. Well, that's because when there is a group singing, they all sing the same pitches and rhythms. Okay, so everyone is singing, even when there's a group singing, everyone is singing the same line, right? And this is called monophony or monophonic music. I mentioned rhythms. Rhythm is very fluid in Gregorian chant and all plain chant. It's not like there's the steady beats that we're so used to hearing in all of our modern music, whether it's classical music or otherwise. We're used to getting this steady pulse in the music. That's a lot more flexible in plain chant, okay? So what I'd like you to do now is to listen to some plain chant. Now you could watch this whole presentation if you want, or I think it might work better if you press pause on this video and then open up down below the link for this particular piece of chant called Puer Natus es Nobis. This is the music. See, this is I mentioned this last time with the two pieces from ancient Greece. Listening to this music can kind of be like going into a time machine and experiencing music in the same way that people living thousands of years ago did. So listen to this. Maybe you even want to close your eyes and pretend it's Christmas Day in Europe, and you're going to listen to this Puer Natus es Nobis. This is the introit from the Christmas Day Mass. Now, it's not, you don't really need to know what the introit is, just know it happens towards the beginning of the Mass, okay? And it's quite beautiful. And so, as a matter of fact, this music was designed to be simple, right? But it also was designed to be calm and beautiful. They wanted to show proper reverence. Remember, no matter what your faith background is, we can appreciate this desire to show proper reverence, right? And that is what this music was designed to do. Okay. So that's very important to consider as well as we are listening here to this Gregorian chant. Okay. Now, religious music was a major um, factor in people's day-to-day lives, but it wasn't the only factor. And that's what we're going to talk about on our next slide here. We're going to talk a little bit about what the non-religious music was like. And if you find this part interesting, don't worry, because we're going to kind of go back and forth between religious and non-religious music. It's so important too, by the way. I feel like I should probably say this, you know, uh, there's a lot of people out there, probably this is not the music of their faith, right? And that's okay. We can listen to this um, for the historicity of it. I think that's important to be able to do that. Um, if this is music, if you have a different faith than the one that is represented here, um, we're talking about this because it is historically important to how music developed to where we're going, right? If it wasn't, then we wouldn't be talking about it, but it is. So, so if that bothers you in any way, you just try to look at this like an archaeologist would look at, a discovery, something in history, right? Um, you know, and if it is, if this is your personal faith, then you can, think, wow, that's really interesting. That's what it was like back in the day for people like me, and that's totally fine too. Okay, but we're gonna get going on here and talk about what the non-religious music was like. Okay, so non-religious music or secular music of the Middle Ages here. Okay, and although religious music was heard in cathedrals and churches throughout Europe and was responsible for pushing advances in music, this is another reason why it's so important to talk about the religious music, because this is what really got things going as far as advancements in music, was the church. A system of notation was developed through the church, okay? Music theory, talking about why music sounds the way it does, how can we make different sounds, things like that. This was developed by the church in the early stages, okay? But even though religious music was responsible for all that, most people experienced music in their daily life through their own regional folk traditions, okay? Folk songs were passed down for ages without a system of notation, just by that oral tradition that we talked about last time with the Greeks. How I would sing a song to my son, and my son would have a son of his own, and he would sing the song to him, and his son would sing it to his son, and this is how things were done for a very long time in regards to music and literature, right? This is just how things were done. People were largely illiterate during this time. They couldn't read or write, so stories had to be passed down this way, and music had to be passed down this way too, because there wasn't yet really a significant uh, system of music notation. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If I'm a German guy, I'm going to have my German folk songs that I know that are going to be different from the Italian folk songs that some guy living in Italy would know. And, because our lives are different living in these areas. There are different cultures, we have different customs, different traditions, and the music is going to reflect that. But new songs were also being written constantly that had a mixture of secular and religious themes. Remember, this is a far more religious world that they're living in at the time. I already said that, the Catholic Church was a major influence in most people's lives who were living in Europe during this time. And because of that, even the secular music will sometimes touch on a religious theme. Now, there was this nomadic group of singers and storytellers known as the troubadours. What does the word nomadic mean, right? What about nomads? Like, who are nomads? Nomadic, the word nomadic means that you don't really settle down in one place for too long. You're constantly traveling around. And this nomadic group of singers and storytellers, known as the troubadours, traveled throughout France, singing old and new songs. Now, they were storytellers, so they would oftentimes tell stories through music. Okay, epic poetry. They would sing poetry, tell stories through music, and things like that. What were these songs about? Well, they were about many different things. They typically tended to be about things like great battles of the past and even great battles of the present. Remember, the Middle Ages, during this time, we get the Crusades, okay? So this is like knights, fighting in the Near East, and people in Europe were excited to hear the news of battles and things like that. So if there was like a particularly legendary or epic battle, the troubadours might sing about that, and it could be a happy song or a sad song depending on who won the battle, right? Uh, what else were they about? They were about kings of old, so talking about the great kings of the past, and also current kings and lords. And they were about legendary stories that were a mixture of fact and fiction. Okay, so I'm talking about the Arthurian stories, the tales of King Arthur and his round table with his many knights, yes? Lancelot, his queen Guinevere, and others like that, right? Also, the stories of Charlemagne. Charlemagne, if you don't know, was French by birth, although the nation of France as we know it didn't exist back in those days. But French by birth, and he fought many battles, kind of unifying large sections of Europe until he was crowned king in the year 800 by emperor really of what back in those days was called the Holy Roman Empire. So that was Charlemagne. So he was a real guy. He really did exist. King Arthur, there is some we don't really know. I mean, largely we know that the King Arthur stories are fiction, but is it pure fiction? Is it fiction that's based in reality? I think it's probably closer to that. Um, was there a guy? I mean, the magic and stuff probably, maybe not. I don't know, but was there someone who King Arthur was based on? Was there a real king who King Arthur is based on? I think probably, if you're asking me. But Charlemagne was undoubtedly a real guy, but there are many different stories about him which may or may not be completely 100% factual. Okay. And then, so these are what the troubadour songs were all about. And they were also about, they also, a different theme that they could be about was this theme of courtly love. Not Courtney Love, the, rock singer, but courtly love, okay? Let's talk about what courtly love was. Courtly love is a concept that existed during the medieval period, which is where we are, that involved the forbidden love between a knight and a young woman. Okay, isn't that just love? What makes it courtly love? Well, here's the kicker here. The knights would do heroic deeds and services in honor of their beloved, but this love was never acted upon. Okay, and this was the real kind of tragedy, the real sorrow, the emotionally torturous, as this sometimes was, because the knight's sense of honor, duty, nobleness, right? They prevented the knight from materializing this, this unspoken love. Okay. In some cases, maybe the young lady was already betrothed to another man, right? So to to kind of steal the woman away would have been considered to be very ignoble and very scandalous and very dishonorable. Okay, and it would have made people look at the young lady as in a very derogatory and mean way. So because of the knight's respect for his own honor and for the lady's honor, this was a unspoken, unrequited love. But on the inside, he was torn apart, man, that he couldn't be with his loved one. Okay, so the many of the songs that you'll hear of the secular variety from this time period will you'll hear the text about this courtly love. How I long to be with you, my dear. And this concept will go on through into the Renaissance as well. There's one particular song I'm thinking of right now that is like a courtly love song, but it's from the Renaissance, not the Middle Ages. Okay, here is your what you're going to do now. Okay, I've been giving out these review sheets, which I think have been very helpful. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. Today you're going to use the remaining time of our class to do a composer study. Which composer are you going to be studying? Well, you're going to be doing the essential medieval composer, Hildegard von Bingen. Okay, so what are you going to do? You're going to write a one-page, double-spaced biography on this composer. Who was this person? What is noteworthy about them? What was this person's life like? What are some important facts about their life? Did this person do anything else besides music? Okay, these are just some things that you can touch on. It's just one page, right? What size font? Size 12, I guess. Doesn't really matter too much. This is ungraded, but I think this will help us as we move forward here. Don't just copy and paste the Wikipedia article, please. A lot of times, not since the shutdown here, but there have been times, especially in the first semester, where I get some real advanced language here in some of these papers, and then when I ask the people what they mean by that, they say, "Oh, I don't know. I just copied and pasted that," which at least they're honest. That's a good thing too. But we don't want to just do that, right? Do your research, and if you don't know what a word means, look it up, right? And if you looked it up and you still don't know what it means, then maybe try to find something else to use, right? We don't want to. I know it kind of feels maybe not like school because of the way that things are set up, but it is still school, and we still have academic expectations, and we also have expectations as to your academic integrity. I think is a good way to say it. You want to have integrity here, right? We don't want to just copy and paste. So do your research and look it up. Please remember to write your name on it as well. Even though I'll see your name when you submit it, it's good for me to, as I'm reading it, to be able to look up and see your name. So put that on there as well. And if there's any questions, you can always email me or post something on Google Classroom. Remember, my office hours are every day, Monday through Friday, 1:30 p.m. to 2:15 p.m. I'm happy to answer any of your questions, and you will get a very quick reply. Now, if you're unsure about something and you feel like, it's one of those things, maybe you ask me in an email or on Google Classroom and I answer it, but it's like you're still kind of confused and you just feel like you want to talk to me, folks, let's set up a Google Hangout. Grab a cup of tea, I'll grab a cup of tea, and we'll talk it out. We'll do a live chat here. We could do it one-on-one if you want. And you can ask me your question and I'll give you the best answer that I possibly can. Sometimes you just need to talk to somebody face to face, and I appreciate that. So we can do that. Just let me know and we can set it up. Okay? It doesn't even have to take place during the office hours time. I mean, it could be helpful if it did, but if that time doesn't really work for you, then we can set it up another time. But let's just let's make an appointment to make an appointment, and then we'll be all good to go. Okay? If there's any other questions, please just let me know. I really want to help. As far as the next quiz, there will be a quiz coming up. Okay, there will be a quiz coming up soon. Grades for the last assessment will be going up probably this weekend. We just got the go-ahead to post grades. We had been told initially to hold off at first because, I mean, this is kind of, I don't have to tell you, this is an abnormal situation that we're in right now. And, right, I guess they just wanted to be cautious about, I think the main point is that we didn't want to penalize people who were having a hard time because we're in an unfair situation, right? But we just got the go-ahead to post these grades, so those will be up soon, and then we will have another quiz probably next week sometime. I'll let you know about that. I'll give you the exact date. The quizzes will only be on things that we covered, so all you have to do is review these videos and review your notes. Hope it could be helpful to take notes as you watch these videos, and that will help you streamline your studying. Also, look at the review sheets, the review questions that I've had you answer these past few classes. That will help you with what's going to be on the quizzes as well. All right, folks, have a great day. I will see you soon. Oh, one last thing really quick. If I have you on a black day, I accidentally forgot to post the listening examples for last time. So I'm actually going to post last class's listening examples first, and then I will post the listening examples for this class as well. Okay, and for this class it will be the Puer Natus est nobis, and I'll give you a troubadour song to listen to as well. Okay, take care and comb your hair. Goodbye.